My name is Ashley Howard and I live and work in the UK. The piece of work I submitted for this biennial is a porcelain piece titled Above the Clouds. The piece featured in my 2018 exhibition Meditations, which was held at Guildford Cathedral in the UK. This presentation briefly outlines the story behind Meditations and the work it featured, of which Above the Clouds is one of my favourite pieces. I began work on Meditations in 2014, intending to exhibit in Guildford Cathedral the following year. Fate intervened when building work on the cathedral took far longer than anticipated. The situation was beyond my control, but seemed strangely in tune with the ethos of the project. I shall explain. The contextual background to the exhibition was the notion of meditating on what will be, and letting things unfold in their own time. I was only one element of the process through which the exhibition was realised. The delay, therefore, was something I simply had to accept as part of something much bigger. This was my second exhibition in a cathedral. For Ritual and Setting in Winchester Cathedral in 2009, the work I made was large in scale. For Meditations, the work was smaller. This time, I did not attempt to compete with the scale of the cathedral. Rather, I offered modest stations for small objects on which the viewer may focus. The long road to Meditations began in 1981 when I was 18. My ceramics teacher took a small group of students to see the exhibition Essential Cubism at what was then the Tate Gallery in Millbank. It was my first experience of an art exhibition and I was enthralled. Towards the end of the day, I chanced upon the room that contained Mark Rothko's Seagram murals. As I crossed the threshold into the space, I experienced a power that was both awe-inspiring, peaceful and spiritual. I witnessed how those who entered the room were immediately hushed and moved slowly and respectfully towards the benches where they sat to contemplate the work. In the book The Poetics of Space, Gaston Bachelard introduces the chapter Intimate Immensity with the words of Jean Vallée. Space has always reduced me to silence. These words encapsulate the spiritual experience I was given that day in the Rothko room. I have always been drawn to sacred spaces, whatever the religion or creed that inspires them. Part of this is how such spaces affect people and influence their behaviour within them. I do not believe that immensity of scale is necessary in order to produce a sense of awe. A small Japanese tea house can provoke the same response as can a vast cathedral. The room that housed the Seagram murals was far smaller than a cathedral, but seemed to instill a similar reverence in its visitors. Perhaps then the way in which a space is composed, along with its purpose and its memories, is of more importance. Meditations was about exploring spaces within space, the experience of specific spaces and the resulting spiritual contemplation, something that is both intimate and immense. As a potter who uses the wheel, I pull up a skin of clay in order to envelope a space. The pot needs this space to exist, even if, as with some of the pieces in Meditations, the space was completely enclosed. I like the idea that the space is still there. I made most of the work for Meditations during a residency at Japan's Shigaraki Ceramic Cultural Park. This was my third visit to Japan, and it set me on a new path. It offered me the time, space and inspiration to examine surface, colour and composition, and I was finally able to build on the foundations laid during my postgraduate experience. My work has continued to develop, so Meditations was essentially a visual record of the source of what I am producing now, and current pieces were included in the exhibition, of which Above the Clouds was one. I am fascinated by different influences and the way in which they can be used. The influence of Japanese ceramics on British studio ceramics is well documented. In my 2014 project, Shima Kara Shima E, From Island to Island, I had moved towards the interpretation of influence as opposed to the replication of influence. This is a fluid dialogue, but it is a primary concern of mine. I have touched on spirituality, but it is difficult to express how this affects my work. All I can say is that I have progressively given up the notion of making my work. When I consciously become involved, things usually go wrong. I practice surrender of ownership to the extent that I feel my work comes from somewhere else. It does not always work, but it's rewarding when it does. So, Above the Clouds is an example of my bringing together of various influences I have been working with, which include East and West ceramic traditions, abstract painting, music, placement and space. Thank you very much for listening.